Well, hello everyone. Welcome into another episode of the Payne and Drain Show. I'm your host, Zach Payne. With me, as always, is my co-host, Alex Drain. After the Lions finally have won a game on Thanksgiving, got a little tense at the end, but they managed to, well, through the Bears' incompetence, managed to escape with a win on Turkey Day. Alex, how are we doing? How are we feeling? Almost a week after that game.
It was a good week. First time since I don't know, sometime probably in the late '90s. I'd have to look it up. That both Michigan defeated Ohio State and the Lions won on Thanksgiving. So that was definitely different and a lot of fun. But the both games gave no shortage of things to talk about, and really both games kind of ended in a scenario where the post-game discussion isn't so much lauding the winners, but pointing and laughing at the team that lost the game. So this was a good week for Schadenfreude.
So the way that we go through every game, each episode, and we talk about the offense, the defense, whatever. Today we're going to do that, but I'm specifically going to save the end of the game for a little bit later because that whole last minute and a half can just be a segment on its own. So to start out with, the Lions offense, they had a productive day in terms of yardage, and they you look up at the end, they put up 23 points, which is pretty good. But once they crossed midfield every drive, it seemed like something was taken away after that, and the Lions just didn't have the same potency as they got closer to the end zone as they usually do. What were your overall thoughts on the offense?
Well, I thought the offense as a whole were pretty good, and it's sort of the story of the game in some sense because you get to the end of the game and you sort of think, wow, the Bears let us off the hook. We are thankful to survive that one, and sure. But also, the Lions' offense left the Bears off the hook. And when you look at the box score, you see a game that was decisively in the Lions' favor. They outgained Chicago by 100 yards, outgained him on a per play basis. So, no reason to think that this wasn't a solid win for the Bears, but I mean for the Lions. But the reason the Bears had a shot is that the Lions couldn't finish some drives. And in particular, there's two drives that stand out that changed this from being a solid Lions win that was comfortable to what it ended up being. And that is a fumble by Jahmyr Gibbs on the 3-yard line. They called a beautiful screen pass, gets the blocking, zooms down 15, 10, 5. Then he kind of spins, gets hit from a weird angle. Like it was definitely a unusual or more understandable fumble than just like it getting punched out straight or whatever, but not good. Gets recovered by the Bears, denies the Lions likely a touchdown. And then you have that drive later in the game when they needed to tack on insurance points. They complete a pass to Jamison Williams, 3 yards, goes out of bounds at the plus 29, and then he throws the football at the face of Tyreek Stevenson and gets a 15-yard penalty. It goes from 2nd and 7 to 2nd and 22. You scrounge back into field goal range. Unfortunately, Jake Bates misses it, but that drive was totally killed by that penalty. And you tack on 3 points at least from that one and 7 points from the Gibbs fumble. We assume they get into the end zone in that situation. Now all of a sudden it's a 13-point win. So I think that probably would have reflected the box score better, but those two individual issues were huge.
Yeah, and the this one of the since week two, the Lions have done a really good job at scoring and finishing drives. This was probably the first time since that Bucks game where the Lions were blatantly leaving points on the board and blatantly getting caught with these kind of mental errors for Jameson Williams or just a bad timing hit for Gibbs. I don't want to criticize him too much. It was a great play by I believe it was Tyreek Stevenson who jarred the ball out of Gibbs' hands. But JMO, for what it's worth, after the game, he went in front of the locker room and he gave a big apology to the team because that can't happen. Those kind of plays can't happen. You can't. If that happened on Thursday against the Packers, or if the Bears had come back and won after that play, that's your turning point. That's your critical moment where JMO just does something really stupid and gives the Bears a big assist to set up a second and long. Not saying that the Lions necessarily would have finished that drive with a touchdown, but you at least would have taken a little bit more time off the clock and kicked a shorter field goal, which you presume Bates would have made. It just is, it's unfortunate. So you hope that that doesn't happen again. It is a little annoying that it's Jameson Williams and that every time there's one of these immature moments, it seems to always be Jameson Williams. But he just is a very outgoing personality, is what I'll say, and he likes to embrace some of the emotions of the game, and he got a little too swept up in it there. Now, the run game was, it was pretty good for most of this. Gibbs had a really good first half in particular. What did you think of the passing game, though? Because this wasn't necessarily a dominant Jared Goff day either. Amon-Ra didn't really get loose. Laporta had a couple touchdowns, but he didn't really have yards. Did you like what was going, I guess, worse for the Lions with the passing game compared to previous weeks?
I wasn't sure exactly. It just seemed a little off. Like there were some good moments. I thought JMO looked good on that first drive. Tim Patrick picked up a 2nd and 23. They had some nice throws to Amon-Ra, but it just totally wasn't quite sticking, despite what I thought was fairly decent protection. I didn't think this was like an atrocious pass protection day, especially with Skipper playing. So I don't know. It's just felt a little off the last few weeks, right? Like the Jacksonville game obviously was immaculate, but the Houston one, 5 interceptions. The Colts one just again felt just a little off, and this one again just felt a little off. So I don't know exactly how to diagnose it. I will say on the full disclosure to the listeners, I didn't get a chance to go back over this game in full because Michigan, Ohio State, and then signing day tomorrow for the recruits. So we've been busy on that front. But just going off of my my memories and the YouTube reels, it just seemed something was a bit off. Did you have any take on it?
So the first thing is the Bears do a much better job compared to most teams at taking away the intermediate middle part of the field, which is primarily where Amon-Ra St. Brown operates. And we talk about the fact that the Bears kind of have Goff's number. That didn't rear its head in this game, thankfully. But one of the things that really contributes to that is good linebacker play. We've talked about this before in the early part of the season when Goff was struggling with the interceptions and with the negative plays and missed throws, that having good linebackers that can cover over the middle is a very key part of slowing down the Lions offense. The Bears have that. They have some good linebackers. It is tough because another part of this is you didn't really get any explosives from the past game. JMO had 4 catches or something, but it was for less than 30 yards, which is very abnormal for him. The Bears, it seemed like the Bears were just content to take the explosive plays out of the game and then force the Lions to do short passes to the outside and then wrap up and tackle. And the run game is really what helped the Lions get down the field consistently and get over midfield. I think what you'll see is when the Lions play the Packers on Thursday, it'll probably be a much heavier dose of Amon-Ra and Sam Laporta since the Packers don't do quite as good of a job of covering the middle of the field.
Yeah, and I thought coming into this game, remember we talked about the rushing attack being a focal point because the Bears had struggled in run defense this year, and early on they were really humming in the running game. That first drive they had Montgomery really going, then Gibbs on that. The first drive they scored a touchdown on. Their second drive to make it 10-0, he was awesome on that drive. So that sustained them early, and then it felt like the Bears got better in that regard as the game went along. 3rd and 2 on their last offensive drive they get stuffed on. That was sort of an example of the Bears eventually adjusting to tighten up. So I do think that they probably came in looking to pound the rock a little more, and then and they have that ability to sort of mold themselves to each opponent, and I think certainly this Bears team made sense to be aggressive on the ground.
So here's one though. The Lions, the vaunted duo, Sonic and Knuckles, all that. Montgomery coming into this game was banged up. It wasn't a foregone conclusion that he was going to play. He was questionable coming in. He ends up with 21 carries. Gibbs ends up with 9 carries. And they both, Gibbs 87 yards, Monty 88 yards. Was the split at all a contribution to the Lions' run game slowing down towards the end of the game as they were able to just keep like keying in on Montgomery, you think?
It did feel odd that they didn't give Gibbs as many carries as it felt like he deserved.
Hmm.
And I assume that's probably fumble related. But the 21-9 split felt wrong,
Yeah.
especially with Gibbs running for 87 yards on his nine
Yeah.
carries. I mean, on a yards per carry basis, 9.7 to 4.2. And again, I understand discipline and sitting a guy down for a bit when he's struggling or as committed an error as Gibbs did in putting the ball on the ground, or in his case, up in the air, since it was
Yeah.
snatched out of the air by the recovering fella. But they needed more Gibbs, and they needed that shot in the arm in the second half when they were starting to scuffle, when Chicago was making a push. They needed insurance points, and we just can't have 9 carry Gibbs games. Like, I'm sorry. I know that both
Hmm.
guys are really good. I love Monty, but Gibbs has got to touch the football more. Even if he's made an error at some point, you got to go back to him because he's too good of a weapon. You can't go that long putting one of your very best players on the bench.
Yeah, and the split with Monty in on the ground makes sense. All season they have been pretty much dead even in the receiving game too, which is very bizarre because for 2 years we've been told how good of a receiving threat Jameer Gibbs is. And before the season started, or in the first few weeks of the season, I said that I wanted to stop being lied to by Ben Johnson and have Jameer Gibbs actually utilized in the passing game. It just hasn't happened. I don't know what the reason is. If the Lions just, because this goes back to the DeAndre Swift days, even and before that, the Lions, whenever they have a guy who seems to be a good wide receiving or a good receiving threat, they don't really utilize him the way other teams would utilize a pass catching running back. You look at the Saints with Alvin Kamara. You look at the Jets with Brees Hall, whatever. You look at the Dolphins with Devon Achan. All these guys who rack up a ton of receptions, and the Lions don't really do the same concepts at all. They are very content to leave their running back receiving threats just little check down hooks and screen passes, and that's about it. Like, it's been a little. I want to see like more angle routes, more wheel routes, just a larger diversity of routes out of the backfield. You don't have to line them up out wide or anything, but Gibbs is capable of running a wheel route. Like, we see it in training camp every year where it's like, wow, Jameer Gibbs just torched Alex Anzalone on a wheel route. I can't wait for the regular season. We never see it in the season. So that is a weird quirk of the Lions offense that perhaps deserves further investigation, but it is a little odd. But as far as the split, yeah, Gibbs, it's not his first few games in the league anymore. He needs to have more than 9 carries. Um, Aside from
Yeah,
that,
and
oh god.
I will say that their screen game with Gibbs is effective. Their screen
Hmm.
game with Montgomery is effective. He had another sort of throwback screen he got 15 yards on, but the wheel route stuff definitely needs to be fixed because they do line Gibbs up as a receiver. I mean, they go empty on third down a decent bit, but they don't do enough of those routes out of the backfield going down, downfield, and wheel routes, angle routes, things of that nature needs to be utilized more. Ironically, this is a game in which the Bears used DeAndre Swift on a wheel route on a huge fourth down, and the Lions covered it extremely well. So this may not be the greatest example of a game to pine for the wheel route, but generally speaking, that's a matchup they need to exploit more, and that is a toolkit they're going to need to use more of.
Yeah. So, we'll see, as it's probably something that will need to wait until next season to fully be explored. But as of now, it's just been a little too balanced in the passing game. Not like Montgomery's a good receiver, but Gibbs has the potential to be very good as a receiver. So just something that I want to see going forward. Aside from that, do you have any other offensive notes from this one?
Um, I want to flag that Amon Ra The one route they had him run, it was just a beautiful play. They had the line, and they had Goff rolling to the right, and then they had Amon-Ra run to the left, stop,
Yeah.
spin, and
And then go
go.
back outside.
That is the torture chamber for defensive backs. I mean, nobody in the NFL is covering that route. Beautiful play call. I loved that one. Should give Sam Laporta a shout out. Had 2 touchdown catches. Wasn't like super impactful otherwise, but 2 touchdowns. So he'll almost certainly remember that coming on Thanksgiving. We should talk about the Sewell trick play pass.
The greatest what if in Lions, if Penei Sewell. So okay, first of all, I'll put the Amon-Ra play up on the screen earlier so that everyone can watch it, because that was a beautiful play on the all-22. Penei Sewell, I'll put this one up too, because why not? But Penei Sewell, we talked about this a few weeks ago. In practice, had been throwing the ball, which you figure, wow, that is going to be a lethal red zone play at some point this season. The Lions whip it out in the first quarter. They're on like the plus 30, plus 35 maybe. Or maybe it might have been closer than that. But they were pretty far from the end zone. And Sewell, this is a real sentence I'm saying. Penei Sewell gets the toss, rolls out to his right, looks to throw downfield, except the Bears quickly reacted and read the play, and the DB dropped back into the passing lane. So Sewell, wisely held onto the ball, stiff-armed a dude into next week, and then ends up losing a yard or two. And that would probably, I don't think you're ever going to see a negative play get more applause from the home fans, because they were loving it.
The clip of just the still motion picture of the stiff arm from Sewell was pretty iconic. Definitely an interesting play. Not sure we'll ever see them go back to it, but hey, they tried to give the fans something for Thanksgiving at least. Outside of that, the other one I wanted to note is the JMO hurdle. That was
he was
maybe
flying.
Maybe the highest elevation I've ever seen on a hurdle. I mean, usually they get up about 5 feet in the air, and they take advantage of the fact that the defender is ducking. I mean, it looked like he got up 6 feet in the air on that one, just flying up there over that guy. Landed, kept running. That was pretty cool, and that was what the shame about the penalty was, that the first half from JMO was excellent. He was great on that first drive, and then he had the hurdle, and it felt like this was a really nice game from him, and then all of a sudden it got sullied by the penalty, but I wanted to note that. And my final note, we did have also a really consequential error that I chose not to include, but definitely could have. You had a holding on Amon-Ra on first, so it was 2nd and goal on the 4. They got 1st and goal on the 4. They threw an incomplete pass. 2nd and goal, he commits the holding, backs them up, and they end up kicking a field goal. So that was another one of those mistakes. It just wasn't their cleanest game offensively. And if they had lost, it would have been on the offense, because the defense, I think, performed about to expectations. Given the personnel they had, we were feeling uneasy about the situation, particularly at DB with Carlton Davis out. The defensive unit continued to bleed injuries as the game went along, and it just really felt like in the second half the offense is leaving these guys out to dry. And they are fortunate that the defense did enough, and that Matt Eberflus did enough to get this one to the finish line.
Yeah, and well, with that being said, we might as well turn over to the defense, because even though they were shorthanded, the first half might have been the best half they've played. They completely shut the Bears out. I think the Bears got, 1 or 2 first downs the entire half. The time of possession was hilariously lopsided throughout, and it just felt like the Bears had nothing the entire time. I don't know what was happening for Chicago, but they just had absolutely nothing going. Caleb Williams was missing passes. The run game wasn't working. It was all coming up Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, they had the run game bottled up pretty much most of the day, but certainly in that first half, and they were putting Chicago behind the sticks. But I thought their coverage was really good in the first half. In particular, Terry and Arnold had a phenomenal rep against DJ Moore with a PBU in that first half that was almost an interception. Really, the
Almost his
PBU was
first
on DJ
interception. Yeah,
Moore,
yeah.
who denied the interception. Za'Darius Smith had a great Dwight Freeney spin move up the middle to force an incompletion. I think on a third and I think it was 3rd and 14 in that first half. So they were really cooking. And as I mentioned, Malcolm Rodriguez had great coverage on that swift wheel route. Helped the ball was underthrown, but he didn't get contact. He face guarded a bit, but he didn't hit Swift. He didn't bowl him over. He did
Hey,
just enough.
as we've learned, face guarding is not a pass interference. Remember that.
Yes. So it was that was a nice showing. It was just a great defensive half from the Lions. And that to me was honestly what was so unnerving about the halftime situation. What was frustrating about the offense getting to halftime only ahead 16-0 because it felt like the defense played the half of their lives. Probably not going to do it for another half. Just given the situation, given the injuries, Chicago's too talented to not figure some things out in the second half. They're going to make a push. We needed to bank more points than we did in that first half, and that ended up coming true, unfortunately.
Yeah, and to start the second half, the Bears come out swinging. Caleb Williams for you know this game, the ending will distract a lot of people from the work he did in the second half. That was probably up until the last like 30 seconds, probably the best half of football he has played in the NFL so far. He had three touchdown passes. All of them were like the first one to Keenan Allen and then the one to DJ Moore. Both were excellent throws. The one to he just rips that over the middle to Keenan Allen, and then he's able to kind of weave through a couple lines as he enters the end zone. And then DJ Moore beats Brian Branch. Not easy to do. One of the Lions' best defender, Brian Branch, covering a outside wide receiver, a little bit more challenging of a task, obviously, but it's not like Branch was that far behind, but Caleb just he layered that throw perfectly and more like he hits more in stride as he enters the end zone. And then Keenan's second touchdown. You want to talk? We talked about the Amon Ra route earlier. I would love to see Amon Ra try this route on. It's like a version of a whip route. I've seen some people calling it a jerk route, where the receiver will run like he's running a whip route. So he runs a slant and then stops like he's going to break back to the outside, and then does like a head fake in the middle of the field to keep going towards the middle. And I mean, it was Amik Robertson got completely shaken out of his shoes. That was one of the better routes I've seen run against the Lions this year. The Bears did a very, very good job their passing attack of working their way back in this game. And I I don't know if I'm necessarily concerned about the secondary considering they were banged up and didn't have Carlton Davis in this one. But it should be noted that the Bears, when they got down and they had to throw the ball, they were kind of able to.
Yeah, I think certainly for me, the personnel is a big story in this game. You get Arnold back, but you're without Carlton Davis. And you look at some of these plays they were able to convert. I mean, they didn't abuse Vildor as much, but you had a really big play later in the game on their final drive, 3rd and 7. They're backed up right near their own goal line. Lions blitz, it gets picked up, and you get a first down on a mesh route to DJ Moore against Khalil Dorsey in man because it's a 6-man blitz. 0% chance that it's ever going to be covered.
So here's one. I know the Lions prefer to play sides with their corners. In that situation, why is Terrion not covering DJ Moore?
I don't know.
I don't get it.
He should. I mean, Roma Dunze, did he even play in this game?
Odunze had one catch on Arnold that I remember that was down in the red zone. It gave the Bears a first down, and Aaron Glenn was losing his mind on the sideline because Terrion forced him to play inside on an outside route, and then he gives up the outside after starting the reps so well, and Aaron Glenn was just screaming at him from the sideline on the all-22. It was very funny to watch, but and then the last play of the game where which we'll talk about, Those are the only two times I really saw Odunze in this one. So I don't know why you wouldn't just say, "Hey, Dorsey, go cover this guy, and do your best. We don't think he's going to get the ball. Terrion, just please save us, because Terrion's been very good." So I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that stood out, and I think otherwise maybe it was not the greatest safety day just because of the branch touchdown allowed, and then they have that seam shot to Keenan Allen. But sometimes quarterbacks play well, and Williams certainly did. He navigated the pocket really well in that second half. He threw a lot of accurate throws. He had one miss on that third and forever to Moore that had a possibility there. Um, Otherwise, though, I was definitely impressed with Caleb Williams. But again, it's the context of this game and situation the Lions are in. I mean, by that second half, when they are starting to have some success, besides the injuries you came in there with, now all of a sudden you have the Rodriguez one. Now all of a sudden, Pascal, Enrique, Wingo all sort of go down fairly early in that game. And by the second half, it's just a patchwork situation. And again, that they were able to just do enough might honestly not be the end of the world retrospectively.
Well, we'll talk about the patchwork defense and what the Lions are going to have to scrape together against the Packers in a little bit. But with that being said, it's time. The final drive of the game might have been the dumbest last 45 seconds to a minute of football I've seen in a Lions game this year. So to start with, you have the 3rd and 7. Dorsey's covering DJ Moore. Bears get down the field. Whatever. The Bears then get pushed into a fourth and was it 14? Fourth and long.
4th and 14. Yep.
And one of the worst defensive pass interference penalties I have seen in the NFL in quite some time, as the Caleb Williams, as he has to, 4th and 14, game on the line, he just chucks it up and tries to give DJ Moore a chance. DJ Moore decides that he doesn't want to play football anymore and just stands there. He does not try to go for the football. So Vildor says, "Well, I'm going to go for the interception." And the ref throws a flag for defensive pass interference. Now, Alex, you have had a lot of pass interference related takes. So I'll default to you. What did you see on this play?
Well, I will say I haven't seen the All 22. What I do know is Jeremy Reisman looked at it and tweeted that there was really nothing there, just, slight grabs, but the ball wasn't catchable, and, the receiver doesn't, again, really make, like, a huge break on it. Like, there's some hand fighting, and then he just is like, I'm not going to get this one. Kind of looks at the ref as players do when they're kind of dejected at the end of the game, right? He wasn't like screaming, look at me, I just got tackled. Like he was just like, we lost. Didn't you see that? And then all of a sudden the flag comes in. And it's like, and part of it too is that, again, it's not like Caleb Williams was throwing a, direct pass where it's really timed up and all that. Like this was, as you said, it was a heave. He has pressure. He's rolling outside. He's running sort of backwards, just fires it up. The ball's nowhere close to the guy. You cannot throw DPI in that situation. Like, you just can't. And there wasn't enough contact there. I felt terrible for Vildor. And that's the play where I kind of sit there and I ponder the yardage infractions of DPI in that 15 yards you get in college. The upside is situations like this. The downsides is you do see in college football sometimes throw a deep shot, the receiver's toasted the corner, and from the corner standpoint, it's just smarter to totally tackle the guy. Just take him out because 40-yard pass is a much worse outcome than a 15-yard penalty. So that's the downside of that. But on the other hand, in situations like this, I do wonder if we should just go with 15 yards because you can't have a marginal penalty, a bad call, be worth 40 yards. Like that, that entire just game-changing flip. I mean, it moves them all the way up to field goal range. You go back, honestly, to that I know people have talked about the one against the Bucks in week 2. There was like a 50-yard pass interference on
Yep.
Terrion that gave the Bucks basically a touchdown. That was a pretty marginal call. Like I don't like it's the same thing I've talked about with holding, right? We're not liking the 5 yards with defensive holding, just because, and with the automatic first
Yeah.
down, just because it's sometimes you'll see defensive holding suddenly 5-yard penalty negates 3rd and 18, and now it's a fresh set of downs. Like it just feels like for the amount of times those calls get missed, we need to recalibrate the yardage inherent to it, because it's giving too much of a prize for stuff that can become really prone to referee error.
Yeah, so it's an unfortunate play, and it wasn't too dissimilar from the Terrion one in week 2, where Terrion barely touches the guy, and he's just trying to make a play on the ball, and they give him a penalty for it. Vildor's just trying to make an interception, and he doesn't he does not prevent DJ Moore from making the catch. That's the thing to me. Nothing Vildor does is stopping DJ Moore from, aside from the coverage, obviously. Like he Moore gave up on the play, and you can't throw that flag, like you said. So after that, then as Lions fans, like every Lions fan was like, "Oh boy, here we go. This is how it happens." And then one of the next plays is a completion down inside the 10-yard line, but another flag, a Lions favorite, illegal use of hands to the face, pushes the Bears back. And at this point, the funniest sequence in a game this season commences. It is, I believe it was second down, and for some reason, there's been speculation the Bears called a quarterback draw here because the tackles both just do not play. Zadarius Smith and I think Muhammad on the other side have free rushes. They get a freebie on Caleb Williams. Great. It is now 3rd and long, and the Bears are out of field goal range. There is like 40 seconds on the clock. They have a timeout. Conventional wisdom says you hurry up to the line, you run a quick play, you throw it 5, 6, 7 yards, you call your timeout, you kick a tying field goal, we go to overtime. Caleb Williams gets to the line. It's taking a little bit too long. So he decides, I'm going to change the play. And he changes the play with like 16 seconds to go. And then they snap the ball with 6 seconds left, chuck it downfield, incomplete. Game over. Matt Eberflus saves the timeout for him to use on the unemployment line. I have never. Have you ever seen an ending sequence like that?
Nothing that really immediately comes to mind. There's so much going on there. You have the sack right before it, where I don't know if the tackles didn't hear the snap count or exactly what happened there. Free sack. Nice for Zadarius Smith, who gets credit for it. I thought he and Mohammed both had nice games. So did DJ Reader. They were noticeable up front, so credit to them. The actual breakdown of the situation here. So when the sack happens, it happens about 33 seconds left. It takes time for them to get up. Caleb Williams gets back to his feet around 26 seconds. I think they said that the play was called in by, was it 19 seconds, something like that, which is more than enough time. And in that game state, you have 2 options here. Option number 1 is you call the timeout right after the sack, and then you draw up a quick out, or you just do a run, and then you have about 20 seconds to fire drill the field goal. Eberflus didn't want to do that, and I understand why he didn't. This is a kicking unit that has had serious problems in recent weeks, as we are well aware of. The blocked one against the Packers, other shenanigans that have unfolded. I don't think he trusted that unit to have to do it in a rush situation. So, in that case, it was a totally understandable decision. All you needed to do was run a play starting at 20 seconds or 15 seconds or whatever. No play is going to take 15 seconds to complete unless it's like a crazy fumble situation. Like, they had the time to not use that timeout. It made sense what they were trying to do. However, Caleb Williams then, as he explained it, audibled the play, and he changed it pretty late in the sequence. and the clock keeps ticking, and then it's ticking down to 10. He's still looking around. At that point, you have to use it. You have to. I know that in doing so, Eberflus would be conceding that I basically botched the situation. At that point, you'd be conceding that you're going to have to put Santos out for a 59-yarder, more than likely at that point. Not super likely to go through given his struggles in recent weeks and the fact it's in Ford Field, which is loud and raucous. But you still got to do it. You can't let Caleb Williams hike that ball with 5 seconds left. You have to intervene and at least give your team a shot to tie the game. And it just seemed like he was in the sunk cost fallacy, where he's just like, well, didn't call it earlier, so what's the point in doing it now? Too late. and the final point in all of this is they still might have gotten away with it if Caleb Williams wasn't the guy in the NFL who holds the ball the longest. Because it's not like he called a play with a quick out and it could have fallen incomplete with 1 second. He held it and held it and held it. And just watching it, by the time he pulls the trigger, I'm looking at that and I'm like, they're going to run out of time. This is it. And it was. So just a really bad situation. An inexperienced quarterback not understanding the situation, and a coach letting him not understand the situation. And that's the big problem.
Yeah, so the Caleb part of this is he did not know that the Bears had a timeout. Caleb did not know they still had a timeout. So he's operating as he sees the clock winding down that, oh no, we're going to run out of time here. I need to change the play to a shot to potentially win this thing. So his logic is, okay, we don't have a timeout. We have no way to stop the clock. We have to go for it. So he audibles into a deep shot to try, he's trying to win the game, right? The problem is he's trying to win the game with, without the correct information, which is the job of the coach to then be like, whoa, hold on. We do not have to do this right now because we have a timeout. We have time. We're good. And the result of it is Caleb obviously mismanages it. Eberflus mismanages it as well. And so you have two guys mismanaging the same situation in completely different ways. And it results in the ultimate LOLBears moment, that like in a season full of LOLBears moments, because like between the Hail Mary against the Commanders and the blocked field goal against the Packers and whatever that overtime was against the Vikings, and now this, the Bears have managed to take a good team and just have an abysmal record. I will say for next year, the Bears are going to be set up for so much success with a fourth place schedule and an improving Caleb Williams and hopefully a better coach. But for now, the NFC North just continues to sit back and laugh because no matter what they do, they just cannot escape their own incompetence.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we talked about after the Hail Mary and to some degree after the Packers game. It's a loser franchise, and Eberflus was a loser coach, and they are going to have to hire somebody who can change that around because it's too deeply embedded right now. It's too deeply embedded in the players. And it just felt like in this situation, especially from a coaching standpoint, you need to communicate with Caleb Williams what the plan is, right? Like it needs to be stated, get up to the line, we gave you a play, just run it. Just run the play, and then we'll take our timeout. And not really sort of give him that option. But again, young player in a tough situation, and it just got away from him, and they end up moving on from Eberflus after the game. No surprise there. Quotes from the players after the game seem to suggest that he had really lost the locker room, that they kind of viewed him as a doofus, and hard not to after the fiascos that we have seen. They're 4-8 now on the season, as we've mentioned. They are a Hail Mary, blocked field goal, possibly other things against Vikings and Lions from being right in the playoff hunt, being right there for a wild card spot, and instead, here's where they are, 4-8. But as you mentioned, they'll get the fourth place schedule. They will have an easier hand next year, although only so easy in this division. So,
yeah.
Long term, I think this was still an optimistic game from the Bears just because you saw really good stuff from Caleb. and you fired the coach that needed to be fired. So honestly, Thursday might not have been the worst day to ever to be a Bears fan, but still sucks. What I'll say about it though, a lot of years where we were used to this sort of thing happening to the Lions, and so it was nice that it got to happen to the opponent on Thanksgiving.
Yeah. As an aside, talking about Caleb, throughout the second half, the my family friends that I was watching the game with, we had a bet going that at some point Caleb Williams was going to make a play that caused a commentator comments to be related to Patrick Mahomes. And we got it because I think it was on the one where, very good play by Williams when he was running to the sideline and it looks like he's going to step out and, last second flicks it downfield to DJ Moore and it picks up 14. And yeah, the inevitable, that looked a little Mahomey comment came in and we were all laughing about that. So shout out Caleb Williams for that. But yeah, he's got a bright future. He is very talented. It's just maybe support him a little bit more, please.
Yeah, it's funny going into this game. I really wasn't feeling that great about it with the Davis injury and some of the other things and the short week. It just, I don't know, something felt a little off. The Bears give the Lions problems, but the one thing I thought about going into that game was that if nothing else, the Lions had the trump card, which is that they had a massive coaching advantage, and you can usually bet on the Bears to blow the game, and they did. So thank you to the Bears for that one. They gave all of us Michiganders and Lions fans abroad a happy Thanksgiving for the first time in a while. I do have a few other notes for this game to get into at the end.
Yep.
4th and 1 at the plus 32, 4:15 to go in the second quarter. They go, they get it. I think we both agree.
Yep.
That makes sense. However, why didn't they go for two, up 22 to 7 in the late third quarter?
So yeah, you have a chance to go up 3 scores. I can't think of a reason. Because the Lions have money plays to get 2 yards, and even if you don't, you have David Montgomery, who you usually trust to get 2 yards anyways. I don't have a logical reason for that. Conventional wisdom says, hey, you have a chance to go up 3 scores, and at worst, you're up 15. It doesn't make much sense.
Made no sense to me. It was a very confusing situation. I was saying that whole drive when they were marching down the field, you score a touchdown here, got to go for two, make it a 3-score game, and they didn't. So that was surprising, a rare error in their judgment. Not sure what to chalk it up to, but Jake Bates also misses his first field goal in this game, 45-yarder. Jim Nantz curse strikes again.
Bound to happen eventually.
I'm glad he missed one in a game they still won. Gets that noose, he's gonna miss one eventually, so might as well miss it in a win. Jack Fox pinned the Bears at their 1 or 2 yard line on the drive that eventually led to the end of game fiasco. And then finally, this was an adventure of a game from a ref talk standpoint. They missed a horse collar that they enforced on the Bears, was completely phantom, gave the Lions a first down. They missed a pretty bad hold on Muhammad on the first Bears touchdown, the seam shot to Allen. He's got an arm around his neck as he's coming around the edge.
I think there was a double hold, like a double clothesline hold on that play, both on the same side as well. I think it was McNeil that was coming in and also was getting hooked around the neck.
Yeah, they just weren't calling holding in this game. They also miss a Juwan Taylor false start on the Vildor DPI play where the right tackle gets a full second and a half to get going before the snap begins.
Yep.
There were some issues in this game. This was one of the more poorly refereed games of the year, so not great in that regard, but in the end, Lions get the win, and they are now 11-1.
And they they tie their franchise record for the longest win streak with 10 games.
Yep.
They have a chance to, which, I mean, having a 10-game win streak in a season, something that was unfathomable to Lions fans for the previous few generations. I don't know if it was the '90s team, with the early '90s teams that had one of those kind of win streaks, but it's been a very long time.
It is a very strange world that not that long ago we were hoping for 10 wins and getting a wild card spot as like the best Lions seasons, and now we're in this world where they beat Indianapolis by 18 on the road and people are grumbling about it not being impressive, and then you win on Thanksgiving and it's not not good enough, etc. It's a very different Lions discourse than anything I remember, but guess we got to get used to it.
It is very funny that the really first real time that the Lions are pining for the number one seed in the conference, and literally everyone around them will not stop winning as well. like they're the Lions are 11-1, right? 11-1, and they have like no room for error rest of the season if they want to be the one seed and get that bye. It's pretty insane, and we'll talk about that as we get into the weekly recap here. To start with, though, we have to start Giants Cowboys on Thanksgiving. Whatever, no one really cared about that game, unless that was where all the degenerate gambling was coming into play. On Sunday night, or not Sunday, Thursday night football. I feel so bad for anyone who had any semblance of hope that the Dolphins would do anything, because it's a cold weather game in Green Bay, and we know that the Dolphins do not do well in those situations. Actually, funny enough, there's a lot of people coming out of that game that are criticizing Mike McDaniel because he, throughout the game, he's huddled up in his 13 coats, and then in the locker room, he was trying to talk to the players while he was shivering and standing next to a heater, and all the players were like, "Really, dude?" So the Dolphins just get destroyed. Like that was never a close game.
They made a charge in the second half after the game was out of hand. I don't know. As I talked about previously, I was not fooled by this matchup. I gave the Dolphins no chance in a cold weather game. It's the Dolphins to me are just for a Michigan tie-in. They are like Ryan Day's Ohio State if they had to play in the NFL in a in a league where you don't have an overwhelming talent advantage over every single team you play. Like we're a skill finesse team with this like kind of wannabe nerdy coach who's not really a great leader or anything. We don't really out scheme teams. When we play a bad team, we can just beat the living hell out of them. But we've seen what happens to this Dolphins team when they play real teams. It doesn't go very well for them. It doesn't translate to other environments. I just don't take them seriously. We've seen the Dolphins enough.
Yeah. Now, moving on to a rare Friday game in the NFL. Once again, the Chiefs cannot keep getting away with this. What kind of dark magic is around Arrowhead? Because the Raiders, who always play the Chiefs close, right? The Raiders are the Chiefs version of the Bears. Like the Bears always play the Lions close, the Raiders always play the Chiefs close. We are down to the final drive of the game. The Raiders have no timeouts. There's like a minute and a half left. And Aiden O'Connell is leading a potential game-winning drive. They get into field goal range. And then, we talk about weird end-of-game sequences. The Raiders have a false start. And then the center snaps the ball. O'Connell wasn't ready for it. It's on the ground, recovered by the Chiefs. The official at the top of the screen, when you're watching on the broadcast, motions false start. And then the refs convene and they decide, no, it was actually an illegal shift and the play is allowed to count and the Chiefs get the ball and win the game. No words. Literally no words.
I don't know, man. This is sorcery at this point. Their last 3 wins, really last
all
4
season.
wins. Yes, all season, but the last 4 wins, this game against the Raiders with this bizarre sequence, rescuing a game against Carolina at the end, beating the Broncos on a field goal block, beating the Bucks in overtime because Tampa Bay wouldn't go for two at the end of regulation. Like, I mean, come on. It's what this all really reveals, and this is also a Cardinals Vikings comment, but it's just really hard to beat great teams when you are a team that can't get out of its own way or has a coach making bad decisions. Like you think about the Todd Bowles not going for two thing. You have the Cardinals against the Vikings kicking 4 field goals under 35 yards, including multiple on like 4th and 2 or 4th and 3. Like you have to coach aggressively. You have to play to win, and you have to be smart to win these games in upset fashion. And these teams don't do it. They're good enough to do it, but then they trip over themselves right in the big moments. And they might have gotten jobbed by the referees making a weird call here, but again, just execute normally there. Run one more rushing play, and you would have had a field goal or whatever play, out, an out route, whatever it is. One more play, get to put the field goal kicking unit on the field, and you win the game. And instead, they can't do it.
Yeah. So, and to transition to that Vikings and Cardinals game, the Cardinals had every opportunity they could ever, like, the Cardinals outplayed the Vikings for 58 minutes of that game. And they took a two-score lead at one point, and then the wheels just flew off the 18-wheeler, and the Vikings were able to mount this comeback. It's at the end of the game. This is where I had a massive problem with the Cardinals coaching staff. You're up by 3, and you have a fourth. It was either 4th and goal from the 4, or it was 4th and 4 within the 10, and they elect to kick the field goal to go up 6 with more like. You're never going to get into that situation and not be punished for it. Plain and simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I mean, early in this game, their first field goal they kick it on 4th and 2 at the Minnesota 13. Like, okay, 4th and 2, sure. And later on, you kick a 31-yarder. That's 4th and 9. Okay, maybe understandable, but it happens because you get backed up on penalties. Then later on, you have to kick one 24 yards because time is running out at the end of the half. Okay. They kick 4th and 5 at the Minnesota 22, 40-yarder. It's good. They also miss a field goal in there, by the way. Yeah. And then they kick another field goal, 4th and 4, 4th and goal at the Minnesota 4. Way too many field goals kicked on 4th and 5 or shorter and in close range. And you're just not going to beat good teams doing that.
Yeah. So I will say the Vikings also missed a field goal in this game. So, devil's advocate with the Cardinals miss. But yeah, like it's very. I was watching the Broncos game last night as well, and I thought the Broncos were going to fully get punished for taking the field goal on 4th and 1 and going up by 2. Luckily, the Jameis Express decided that he wasn't done giving the Broncos some turnovers, and they are able to survive. But yeah, you cannot, especially against a team like the Vikings, who were 9-2 coming into that game. Like, if you're the Cardinals, you have to be thinking we're still alive in the division race. We need to get a win against a good team here. We have to empty the clip. I don't know how that's not an empty the clip type of game from Arizona. So very disappointing. The Lions get no help. They also get no help from a team that notorious is basically known for beating up on NFC opponents, as the Ravens fall to the Eagles. And we talk about earlier, Jake Bates. At least he missed a kick in a game that the Lions ended up winning. The Ravens' losses have been by a combined 22 points. And in those losses, Justin Tucker has missed 22 points worth of kicks. Justin Tucker, the greatest kicker of all time, has fallen so far off the cliff that he has now cost the Ravens at least 3 games this season.
It's really bad. This situation, just watching that game, the most baffling part about it is the way they were coaching that game, still sort of setting up situations for him to attempt field goals. And it just didn't make a lot of sense to me given the way he was playing, in this game. I mean, they have a 3rd and 7 in the late third quarter. while the score is 14-12, and they throw a deep bomb for Aguilar, and he doesn't bring it in. Now they're kicking a field goal. I mean, to me, they're on the 35-yard line. That's going to be a 53-yard field goal. Your kicker is not performing well. 3rd and 7, you can't be taking a deep shot there in a contested situation. You need to either just focus on picking up the first down or getting into short yardage to go for it on 4th down. You cannot put the kicker out there for 53 yards when he is performing like he is. And it's one of those things that frustrates me a lot in baseball in particular, where you see it with closers all the time. And, like, look, I'm not going to say that Justin Tucker is now, like, horrendous. Maybe he is, but we have to see more evidence. But he's not kicking well. And I know that he has a great track record, and I know that he was one of the best, blah, blah, blah. But at some point, when it keeps costing you games, you have to reflect that situation. And you see it in baseball where it's like, well, he's our closer. And he's our closer. He's been our guy. He's been great in the past. It's like, yeah, but he just blew 3 games in the last 10 days for you. Someone else has to close for a little bit until he gets his game back. And yet they just kept putting him out there. And where they're at now, to me, I don't know what the kicker waiver wire or practice squad situation looks like, but you got to sign somebody. You cannot continue to put him on the field regularly if he is going to have another meltdown like this. You've got to bring someone in to either give him some competition. You've got a bye week to figure it out. But this is bad. This is a 5-alarm fire for them. And they've got to get with the times and recognize that this isn't the Justin Tucker from a few years ago, even 10 years ago, whatever. You got to adapt to the situation.
Yep. And so the Eagles put an impressive win on the board against a very good Ravens team as a result. And then aside from that, the only other note I had, 49ers season seems officially dead in the water. 5-7. Christian McCaffrey is now out for the year again. Brutal season for CMC. Unfortunate with the injuries, and at 5-7, the Niners pretty much have to run the table given the fact that the Seahawks now have 2 games on them. So, I mean, good luck, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, they play the Bears this week in what's going to be a fascinating game. I don't know what the Bears will have in the tank, although we've seen in the past, you may remember after the Lions canned Patricia, they went on a little bit of a strong December there for a few weeks with Darrell Bevell as interim coach. You do see that.
He did beat the Bears, too.
He did. When coaches lose the locker room and then you fire them, sometimes you get that little new coach bounce because the players are remotivated. So we'll see what happens there. The Niners, yeah, they probably have to get to 10-7 to win this division. And it just doesn't seem like it's happening, particularly with that Lions game. The biggest thing for our purposes is to cheer for the Niners to lose more games in the next few weeks to get them totally out of the picture, totally unmotivated by the time that Monday night game on December 30th comes around. They'll be without McCaffrey and Mason, I believe, for that game. They're both on the IR, so they have to miss it. So they'll be depleted anyway, but it goes a long way towards making the math with this schedule easier if that Niners game turns into a likely win or a lean win situation.
Yep. And it's good. The Lions, it's also going to depend because the Niners still have a lot of talent, and the Lions are obviously very beat up. Which, speaking of which, it's to diagnose the injuries for the week. I haven't really had to do this all season, but we've had a lot happen this week. So Malcolm Rodriguez and Mekhi Wingo are both out for the year. Rodriguez tore his ACL. I don't know. I didn't see what Wingo actually had. I just know that he's done for the year. Onwuzurike and
they just had a knee for Wingo, and they didn't specify like a ligament, just knee. But
so maybe we'll see him next training camp. He had a fine rookie season for being a 6th round pick. Like he had some pressures. Yeah. He had a few QB hits early in the season too. But I'll see you next year, I guess. Onwuzurike and Josh Pascal, they're gonna miss this Green Bay game, and then day to day after that, they'll probably be back for the Bills game. Carlton Davis, questionable, but is trending in the right direction to play. Taylor Decker is not going to play, it seems like. Seems very unlikely that he'll play. Emmanuel Mosley, after a surprise scratch on Thursday. Seems good to go for this week. Did you ever see an explanation for why he didn't play?
They said he like aggravated something before the game, but it does sound like he should be back this week. So
So he'll be back. So reinforcements in the secondary, and then the Lions signed some reinforcements at linebacker. They signed Quan Alexander off the Broncos practice squad, and they signed Jamal Adams to play linebacker, not safety. So I mean, bodies. Not expecting the world from them, but their depth now that David Long has suddenly been thrust into a potential starting role after we talked about him being depth a few weeks ago. The front seven is so dead right now. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, this is what I'll say first about this. David Long did have a nice run stuff in that game against the Bears, so shout out to that. What's so interesting about this situation and what they've been doing in the practice squad is that I am shocked at the quality of name, not quality of player, but name on some of these practice squad pickups. Like, normally you sign a guy off the practice squad, I expect it to be like that Ezekiel Turner guy they signed, where it's like, I've never heard of this person in my life. Like, practice squad signing, I expect it to be someone named like Cornelius Wilkinson or something. And instead, it's like, oh, okay, Jamal Adams, I remember that name. Quan Alexander, I remember that name. And so these are guys that at one point were really good players. Not as much anymore, but still pretty solid pickups in that sense. And you don't need them to be incredible. You just need them to give you a good game or a couple good games. Like, you're not asking them to revive their careers. And sometimes veterans do have that ability to reach back and give you one or two good games. So I like it from that standpoint.
Yeah, and it is very odd. Injuries happen every year. It is so weird that all of the Lions' injuries have pretty much exclusively been to front seven players. Like the secondary, Davis, Arnold miss a game, whatever. Offensively, okay, yeah, Taylor Decker misses a game. JMO gets suspended, but then Laporte. But then the front seven is where all the IR guys are. Like I think it was John Whitaker put out basically a list of the front seven that started the season on the 53-man roster, and there's only like 4 names left out of the like 16 that were starting. It's been brutal. The front seven is just completely dead. We'll see what they are able to do on Thursday as the Green Bay Packers are coming to town in a very rare Thursday night game, but both teams have a full week off to prepare. I don't think I've seen that before.
Was that the case with the Aaron Rodgers Hail Mary game? Because that was
Oh,
also a Thursday night game, and it was early December. So I know I'm pretty sure the Lions were coming off Thanksgiving. I don't remember if the Packers were. Let me look that one up real quick.
yeah.
But
But so going into this game, this is going to be very different than the Packers game from earlier in the season for a few reasons. For one, it's going to be played in Ford Field, so the conditions will be pristine as opposed to all the rain that was happening in Green Bay for that game. Jordan Love is going to be healthy. He was hobbled a bit in that game. That affected his mobility, his ability to throw off platform, which is a huge part of his game, as we all know. Whether he is pressured or not, he likes to throw off platform. And also, the Lions' front seven is significantly hobbled. So Josh Jacobs is going to have an easier time of it, especially if DJ Reader doesn't play, which he is questionable as well. It should be noted. Um, this is a weird one because if we harken back to last Thanksgiving, when the Packers came in and just kicked the Lions' ass, um, this I don't know. I'm not necessarily like scared or terrified. Like, oh no, the Packers are going to come in, they're going to do the same thing to us. That being said, if there was ever a week for the Packers to beat the Lions, a lot of things seem to be adding up in their favor heading into this one.
yeah, this is a situation where you really need that 11-day break. Like, they need it so badly, and you're gonna just try and grind out that game. Gonna try to you're going to need to win it through your offense. Like, this
Yep.
defense is probably going to get carved up. You're just going to have to. Honestly, it's kind of the blueprint they had late last season, where it's like probably throw a lot of weird blitzes at them, try to create an interception or two to swing the game, and then just hope our offense balls out and we win the game that way. If they win it, it will be one of the best wins of the Campbell era. They will have to dig deep and really battle and pull themselves up by the bootstraps to win this one. But it's certainly possible. They're the home team. Got to play the games, all that good stuff. So it just sort of is in that feeling of like we've won 10 in a row. It's really hard to keep a winning streak going. The injury situation is so severe that it doesn't feel great going in, but again, that's why they play the games.
Yep. And coming into last Thanksgiving, the Packers, when they went to Ford Field, it was the opposite situation, right? Where the Lions' front seven was locked and loaded. You knew they could stop the run, but the secondary was basically just a hodgepodge of guys that shouldn't really be there, especially at corner. Now it's the opposite, where if Carlton Davis plays, your secondary is healthy. And then your front seven is just very, very beat up. It'll be Jack Campbell, Ali McNeil, and Zadarius Smith with a bunch of guys that coming into the season no one had heard of, and then see what happens. This is if the Lions are able to pull this off. You talk about Dan Campbell, one of the best wins in the Dan Campbell era. This has, if the Lions win, this could be Aaron Glenn's magnum opus as he prepares for head coaching interviews in the winter here. So they have to play the games. You really need. There's no room for error on offense, though. You probably need to score more than 28, probably over 31 to win this game. So we'll see if they can do it, I guess.
It's yeah, it's frustrating too because you'd really love if the Bills and the Packers games were flipped. Like
Yeah.
if you could lose one game the rest of the way, you'd prefer it to be the Bills game rather than the Packers game. I do like the fact that the secondary at least is healthy for the Packers, just because they have good passing game, and that's how they exploited the Lions last year. So I'm glad that the DB room looks better, but the front seven is so banged up that it's going to be a tough climb. You're going to need guys like Zadarius Smith to have great games. You're going to need Jack Campbell to play really well. The few remaining players you have are going to have to rise to the occasion, and the offense has to rise to the occasion. But as we've seen with this Lions team, they have so many different ways they can beat you. And are going to need to lean on that offense to do this one. The offense has had more tepid games the last couple of weeks. Maybe they've got a Seahawks or Jags or whatever sort of game up their sleeve where it's just like, we are on tonight and there is no stopping us. And if they do that, they'll still probably find a way to win.
Oh yeah. If the Lions are just clicking on offense and put up 5 touchdowns, like they're gonna win. The defense is super banged up, but given the secondary being healthy and how good the red zone defense has been, you still expect it to be decent. If you can probably get away with holding the Packers under 30, maybe under 28 if a few things go your way and you force a few field goals. Maybe there's some holding penalties in there as the Packers get over midfield, but this is not going to be a comfortable game. This is going to feel a lot more like the fourth quarter against the Bears or the first quarter and fourth quarter against the Vikings than it will even the last game against the Packers. Like there will be no easy rides on Thursday night. So with that being said, you got any
Yeah.
last thoughts?
My only final thought, honestly, is about the continued whining surrounding the not getting any help in the division, about the Cardinals and then the Ravens, etc. I don't know, man. Like, it's about the playoffs. Like, obviously, you want to win the division. You want to win the number one, get the number one seed. But even if we just look at this game, let's say they lose to the Packers and that begins a spiral that ends with the Vikings, winning the division. If your two options are beating the Packers on Thursday, but then going 15-2, getting number one seed, and then losing in the divisional round to the Packers, or the option is losing to the Packers on Thursday, falling into a wild card spot, but then you beat the Packers in the playoffs. Like, everyone picks the latter. Like it's about the playoffs. This is we talked about this at the start of the season. Like there have been many teams over the years that went to the Super Bowl, won the Super Bowl as wild card teams, and there were many, many years over the years, whether it was the Packers with Rodgers or the Colts with Peyton, that had an immaculate regular season, seemed completely untouchable, and then they lose first game of the playoffs. I mean, that happened. Remember that happened to Baltimore a few years
Yeah,
ago
I
against
was gonna say
Tennessee,
that
where
was
they
the
just
Derrick Henry game where he just that's where Derrick Henry like truly transcended to superstardom because he just ran all over them and the Ravens offense did nothing.
Yeah, I mean the Ravens that year seemed like the best team in the NFL. They were like 14-2. It was Lamar's MVP year, and then boom, just gone in a meltdown fashion in the first game. So yeah, we want to have a strong regular season, but it does come down to the playoffs. And at the end of the day, say this in other sports as well, it's the same whining that we hear from Maple Leafs fans about the Atlantic Division. Like if you want to win the championship, you're gonna have to beat real teams. Like you're gonna have to beat good teams. Like sorry, that's the way it goes. And you're just never gonna get a cakewalk matchup to win the championship. Like maybe you'll get an easy round here or there, but you're not gonna just beat 3 9-7 teams to win the Super Bowl. Like you're gonna have to go through the teeth of the NFL to win it all. So you know, doesn't mean that much to me. You got to play well in January against the best of the best, and that's what really counts.
If the Lions wanted an easy path to the Super Bowl, they would have won it last year. Because that last year was the easiest path you'll have where you play a pretty good Rams team. You play a Bucks team that had just beaten a fraudulent Eagles team last year. And, credit to the Bucks for how hard they played, but they were hardly championship contenders. And then the Niners, you really jumped on them in the first half and then you blew it. So
Well, and you think about the year before that, Philadelphia had the only truly easy path to the Super Bowl, playing the fraudulent Daniel Jones Giants, followed by the Purdy-less Niners mess in the
yeah.
NFC Championship. But then what happened? They made the Super Bowl and they had to play Patrick Mahomes, and then they didn't win. So what did it really get them? I don't know. I mean, a trip to the Super Bowl is always nice, but it's not like they took home the hardware. They eventually had to beat the dragon waiting for all of us, and they couldn't do it. So
Yeah. So, with that being said, yeah, we play the games. Obviously, we want the Lions to be the 1 seed so they can have a week off and they can rest up with all the injuries they have. But at the end of the day, who cares? Like, if you end up as the 2 seed in the NFC, you're gonna still get a decent first round matchup. So it's really all you can hope for at this point. So, with that being said, that's going to be it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening or watching. If you're on YouTube, make sure you follow the show, give us a rating, or like and subscribe if you're on the YouTube feed. You can find us on Twitter. The show is at Payne and Drain. You can find me at ZachPayne41, Alex at Alex_Drain. So we'll be back with you early next week to preview a Bills game and recap another week of shenanigans in the NFL. In the meantime, FTP. Let's go, Lions.